good to see everybody here. Hope you are enjoying your summer and also are uh, are
Distance.
staying well and safe. Uh, my name is Jaime Guiaga. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the chair of the Carlos Bulusan Book Club, and uh, it's great to actually have this webinar online. It's a project that we in the club have been thinking of doing for the past year now, but with COVID-19, that has really taught us how to do webinar classes virtual. So
Or try
uh,
to.
bear with us if we have some glitches. This is our first try, and probably all of you have been joining in different webinars over the last 3 to 4 months while we all shelter at home. Uh, so I think I just want to go ahead and officially start this webinar class. Welcome everybody. We have, along with myself, I also have 7 other members of the Carlos Bulusan Book Club and Friends of Echo Park Library, and of course our featured speakers, Florante Ibanez and Carol Ojeda Kimbrough. So let me see here. I'm going to share, I just want to briefly share the agenda with everybody. So as you can see here, we will, I'm doing right now the introduction, which should be nice and brief. And shortly, Vicky will do a brief poll as an icebreaker for all of you. After that, we will introduce our speakers who will present on the topics of the US-Philippine relations, how it started during the turn of the century, followed by Florante Ibanez on the topic of colonial mentality. And then we will all break out into breakout groups of probably no more than 6, max 7. And with a facilitator facilitating the discussion. So I will have the facilitators introduce themselves at that point. It's also going to be, I don't want to have everybody, all participants introduce themselves in this opening group. So we'll wait till the breakout group to do that. We do have, I hope that from the reminder emails that was sent to you, you'd had a chance to go to our website, which details the agenda for today. And it's, if you want, you can open that in a separate screen for that you could follow, but it's not necessary. I hope you also had a chance to look at the guidelines for breakout groups. Again, we want all of you to participate and engage in the discussion, but at the same time, being mindful that there are other participants in the group. We want you to use I statements, own your statements, uh, and no, don't speak for everybody. I think if you speak in the I statement, there's nothing wrong. It's always correct as it applies to you. Let's see, whatever. Anyway, these guidelines are going to be again reviewed by the facilitators once we go to the breakout room. Let's see, what else am I missing here? And then after the breakout room, also in the breakout room, we'll ask the group to select a volunteer to take notes of the discussion, and that volunteer, when we all come back to the main group after 50 minutes of breakout, to come back and report back to the general group about what your group discussed, mainly the discussions. In the breakout group, we want each participant at that time to take the opportunity to introduce themselves, where they're from, what interested you in joining this webinar, and maybe share something from the book, whether a character other than Aloes, either a character, an incident, or a place that really affected you. So, and then we have questions that the facilitators will help in guiding the discussions. After the breakout group, we will come back to the general group where we will do the report back, and then I'll do a closing. We hope to finish this webinar by 4. That should give us enough time to engage in discussion. So by 4, we invite everybody, those who want to hang around, to meet and greet, to chat, to ask questions. Feel free to stay. We plan to keep this going till 4:30. So that's what we're gonna do. Hold on. So my other co-host, who's gonna help me with the technicalities of this webinar, is Vicky Perez. So Vicky, if you just want to briefly introduce yourself and then introduce our speakers.
Sure. I'm Vicky Perez, and I've been with the Carlos Bogosam Book Club for a few years now. I'll go ahead and introduce our speaker, our first speaker. I wasn't sure if we wanted to go ahead with a poll.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, do the poll.
Yeah. And so what we have is just a icebreaker to see what the character of our participants is. And of course, facilitators can also participate. So I'll go ahead and put this up. It'll just take a minute. So some of us older folk may have to scroll up on the age group to get the accurate group that we fall in. Okay, I think that's about it. So I'll go ahead and end the poll. And we can take a look. So just it shows that at least half of the group were born here with immigrant parents. And let's see here, and most of us are generation, well, a split between Generation X and Generation Y. Okay, thank you. So we have several breakout rooms with a facilitator in each one. If folks aren't familiar with breakout rooms, it takes about 10 seconds for it to transfer over, but you don't need to enter anything. You will be asked if you agree to join a room, and just go ahead and enter yes, join the room. But it will bring you back at the end when the session concludes. Okay, Jaime.
Yeah, yes. I'm not able to unshare my screen, but
here we go.
So
hey, there goes.
We'll have everybody go to the breakout room. We'll spend the next 50 minutes. Really, this is the meat of this webinar. I want to thank Florante and Carol for such an excellent presentation that sets the basis for us to meet. And we will meet back at about 3:30 to do our report back. And so take it away, Vicky. Send everybody to their breakout room and enjoy your discussions.
Yeah, you're automatically being switched over, so you don't have to do anything. So just be patient.
So good. That 50 minutes went by fast. I hope everybody had a chance to go around and introduce yourself and have some discussion about some of the questions, or share ideas, share your experience in reading the book. Now let's maybe just do some brief report backs from each of the group. We'll have a anybody want to go first, or I don't know, did the group
you have to unmute if you're going to do the group, you have to unmute Gerald. He was in our group.
Okay, Gerald.
Okay, Gerald.
So
yeah, do I get, oh, I have to go first. Okay. So
you got volunteered.
Yeah, thank you, Rose. So I didn't
You want to go later?
No, it's fine. I can just look at my notes. Luckily, I took them. But I'm going to just try to read off the really important parts. All of it was really great context, and Jocelyn put a lot of great historic context, like especially her experience working with the community of Filipinos in LA, I think was really important. But I'm going to speed through all of this because I have no idea how much time we have. Carol did a great job of explaining the push and pull, so we don't really need to go through that. There was a question on how we as a small breakout group was exposed to this history, which was a great kind of like additional question Rose introduced. And so in some places it was in our education in college, in some places it was our involvement in the community, and sometimes it was just our individual involvement or our actual experience being there in that history. So that was really interesting. One of Jocelyn's points while she was working with those Manongs in LA was that a majority of them use the language of when I go back home. And I think that was something that really hit me because I've read it before, right? That concept of like, this is only a means to the end and eventually I'll get to the end. And for a lot of them, they never got there, which, you know, very emotional. And then we all went through some parts of our history and our families coming to America. And, you know, the really strong piece to that was, it was largely, for the most part, it was matriarchal in the sense that our mother's sides were largely coming here, either through the war bride kind of concept or through becoming a nurse like my mom was. And it was still kind of like largely led on the women's side of even providing for families back in the Philippines. We also tied that again to colonial mentality and how that concept of matriarchal frameworks within the Filipino community was also pulled away by chasing after American values, right? Like American ideals for families are largely patriarchal and it's largely white, and that's both of those things are not Filipino women. And so as we chased after being American, we also decentered our women who were largely, and still to this day are largely our breadwinners or whatever that phrase is. We didn't really go into question 3, so I'm going to skip it. There was a lot of conversation about, you know, in terms of colonial mentality, there's still this existence of it passing on between generations and how some of us didn't learn Tagalog because our parents didn't want to teach it to us, and our parents might not want to teach it to our children. And so there is still the existing impact of chasing after American values. And even that concept that shows up in the book of where are you from? Where's your region? Where were you from in the Philippines to, in some sense, prove yourself? And then lastly, the question about education as a tool of imperialism. There was a great conversation around ethnic studies, which, you know, but it was to one extent, it's depending on where you are in the United States, because it's largely on the West Coast where ethnic studies is pretty prominent, especially in California. But at the same time, it's also very much dependent on the teacher who's in the classroom, because the teacher who has that sense of like self-determination and who wants to teach it will teach it to their children because it's important. And then lastly, in terms of education, is it still a tool of imperialism? It is. It still continues to be. We have to get rid of it. Sorry. We have to break down what it is now, because it was a tool to save the savages. It's the exact same tool that was there back then. That was forced on the Philippines. It's still the same tool that creates a majority of a worker class while elevating some intellectuals, right? And it's got to go. And with the current climate of everything that's happening, it's especially important that we approach public education with that lens of we are still adding to American imperialism here, and we're still adding to a system that creates a 90% like go to the trades, or you're not cut out to be a scholar, or go to school to get money. So it's all got to go. And the last point I really wanted to, Rose's last point, which was we need to do more in terms of creating content. we need to do more in documenting our own experiences of our connection to the historical context of Filipino immigration, because you can read a book like America's in the Heart, but you can also draw that connection right with your own family and with the people around you. So, and then her quote, we need to continue writing our history because no one else is going to do it. And that is all. I use a lot of time, but thank you.
No, thank you for that summary. Very good summary. I will
Great.
ask for
Thank you.
another group person to present report back. Vicky, how many groups did we end up having? Anyway, so anybody want to volunteer?
Danny volunteered.
Okay.
Danny, go ahead.
All right. Here I go. Thanks, James. Well, it wasn't, in terms of the content, there was definitely different conversations, but in terms of the themes, there were similarities to the previous group. And rather than talking specifically about each question, we kind of were telling our own stories, and then organically these two main questions really guided our conversation around the question about education and is it continuing to perpetuate colonialism and imperialism, as well as the question about why aren't we telling more of our stories. And through our own individual experiences, we talked about kind of how we came to this book, our experiences around the need to speak up and to use your voice. And it seems like all of us are in fields where we have opportunities to do that, whether it was in education or in health services or in politics. And we also talked then about where this comes from, about don't rock the boat, don't bite the hand that feeds you, not creating any problems, not, just making sure that we're kind of like those good immigrants, that model minority type of a thing, and how that is something that we're continuously working with and fighting against. And then, of course, that then translates into education and the system as a whole. And let me think what else. Talked a lot about gangs and gangs and how we probably know a lot of people who are in gangs, and that's all good too. And we talked about how people are going to have different experiences based on where you're from. So there was 4 out of 5 of us who are, well, we had people who were born and raised in the States, and then a couple who are from the Philippines, and how that experience is different. But what I loved about that conversation really revolved around that we don't need to differentiate between good values and bad values, and how like the Filipino values are less than the American values, and how that's going to really just continuously take us knowing our history and knowing our community to understand that Filipino values prior to colonization were good values. So a lot of it was really about how we just have to continue to know more, to dig deeper, to understand our history, and how this book, and I like the way that Mark said it, 8 decades later is still making an impact. And probably Carlos Bulosan didn't know while he was writing it that this was the work that was going to continue to happen with a group of people online using his words to still unpack and work through a lot of the challenges that we're having today. So just sit with that for a moment and say, wow, like what was happening back then, even though I, for example, can't personally relate, can still use that story to help me and my community go through what we're going through today. And at the end of the day, yes, we need to continue telling our stories, and we need to continue working together as a community to elevate each other up in a compelling way, so that it goes beyond just our community, and that our story is worth telling, and we have to just get it out there to the masses. Mark, Jaime, James, Gabriel, did I miss anything?
Great job.
Okay.
Good job.
Oh, and we have Bruno Mars.
Yes, and Bruno Mars is ours. We claim Bruno Mars.
Okay, thank you for that, Danny. Another group, just go ahead, unmute yourself and start doing your report back.
I guess I'll go next.
Okay, great.
My name is Zoraida, and the group that I was with David, Vicky, Bonifacio, and Carol. And quite honestly, it's kind of Jarrell's breakout notes and Danny's breakout notes. We kind of had an informal discussion of our questions, but it kind of lines up with what everybody is saying about telling your story and just the cross section of the way that all of us have immigrated here, come from the different perspectives of like the pensionados and I don't know, doctors and education on their ways of coming here. So I don't think we need to go into that because it's kind of along the same lines. But just to bring up an interesting, I haven't read the book. So unfortunately, I mean, in hearing all your stories, I can't wait to read the book. But one part of the book that we talked about was, David asked the question on what was one of your favorite parts. And in the book, they talk about where he finds a room full of trunks with different people's names on it. And he was able to look through and see what was in the different trunks. And again, I haven't read the story, but basically it relates kind of back to what Danny, to me, was saying about why not why aren't we telling our own stories? And for some people, they have that ability to look into their family line's trunks. Not all of us do. Like, for example, Carol she came to the United States when she was 19 for political reasons. And I don't know if she's returned, but she doesn't have a trunk that she could pass on to her family. And I think the important thing to gather from our discussion and listening to what Danny and Jarrell pointed out is that it's important for us to create these trunks in the form of our history, not only the Filipino Americans that have immigrated and the stories back home, but also personally, your story of your family and the struggles and how they got here. And that goes down, that should be the trunk that you pass on down your family. So that's one perspective of things that we discussed. And the second thing, the question of the colonial mentality that was created by both groups, the Spanish and the American impact. And we kind of discussed, went back to what Florante had mentioned about, well, for the Spanish impact, it was the religious take that most Filipinos are Catholics because that was the forced religion upon them. And so that's what they identify with. As far as the American aspect, it was going back to what Florante said about losing your language, trying to lighten your skin color, which is kind of a loss of self. And in subconsciously, I think I wouldn't say I think, but I think the gist of our conversations is that those types of self loss of identification still exist today. Like you still, it still perpetuates itself. And which is why Danny's message is important, that we need to take more action in telling our stories so that the generations currently and future understand that when they are self-hating or what have yous, or not appreciating their culture, it has to do with the initial impact of the colonial mentality. So maybe some other people from our group can like chime in because I was just kind of babbling. Vicky?
You did great.
Yeah, that covered it. That was very well portrayed.
Okay.
Good job.
Is there another group that hasn't done the report back? Go ahead, please unmute yourself and start your group report back report.
Hi there, I'm Leslie Alejandro, and I was in a group with Florante, Eileen, Kevin, and Hazel, which is funny because my sister Danny took notes for that one. I didn't want to take notes. I was hoping she'd be in my group. So we talked about colonial mentality and how it was forced upon us. And Florante asked, did we feel that it existed? Did we feel that it was, we grew up in our lives? And of course, all of us said yes. We talked about, somebody had mentioned that he found fascinating his last name, and because he trying to connect with his last name and what that meant to him and what it meant to him when he was in school, and how comfortable Latinx students was able to connect with him because they recognized his last name, but not him himself didn't really have a connection to it because he found out that his name was a town in Spain, and so he didn't really connect to that part of it, but knew that he was stuck with it. I'm going down my notes here, and fascinated with the ideas of being the Filipino American experience, and how it connected him to his name. Florante had asked us a question that he says that he asks his students, and who do we think writes history? And he mentioned that winners write history. So talking about how objective history is supposed to be, but how subjective it really is because of the people who write it. We started discussing actually our unique view of being Filipinos in the US education system, and the perspective that we were taught and that we were fed, and then being able to read a book like this and then seeing it from a different perspective, and how we could just understand a little bit more about our culture and where we actually came from, and kind of like talked about the eye-opening and or the waking up from what you thought life existed like here in America, and what you end up knowing our ancestors or the people generations before us had to go through for us to even exist in this space. We talked a little bit about let me see, hiding historic events to line up with their narrative. We brought it, like everybody else had mentioned as well, to what is happening now and what people are discovering, how much history is hidden from us or written differently to kind of fit the narrative of what they want us to believe, the US ideals are, and how people are now fighting and pushing to actually put the truth from other cultures and what had happened for, the US forefathers to get to, to the place that we are right now. We talked about how America gives us opportunities, but the opportunities are at the bottom, and what the immigrants had come in thinking that what kind of opportunities that they had, but because of survival and trying to find cultural connection, they ended up doing criminal activity. And then Florante said, in order for us to really talk about our history, really move forward, like Danny and Jarell and Zoraida had spoke about, and telling the stories that we need to tell, that we need to organize. So these are kind of in a nutshell. Am I missing anything, guys? Sorry, I'm like just going through bullet points right now.
You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other group that we've missed that hasn't reported yet? Is that it? That's it? Is somebody raising their hands? Otherwise, great. I'm glad. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. It's 10 minutes to 4. We're gonna end at 4 o'clock. Those of you who want to stay, please feel free. If you just kind of want to hang out and talk to other attendees, but I will stay. Hopefully, some of the other friends, board of the Friends of Echo Park and CBBC will stay. But having noted that, everybody will immediately get an email evaluation and feedback form. Please fill that out, because that will help us in improving this webinar class. You will also get the link. I think I've sent out the link already for you to register for the session 2 in August 22nd. Please do that. It will be officially opened on our website for other people who want to join, but we're giving you all first priority to do that. So I hope that all of you will return and engage with us in this class.
Library is located not, it's actually just outside the boundary of historic Filipino town in Los Angeles. For some of you who are not local here, just a little bit about this library. It's the only public library that has a Philippine heritage collection. We have about over 500 titles in our little collection, but it was part of our community service to establish that. And the second program is this Carlos Bulusan Book Club. But if you would like to check our website, it's friendsecopark.org. And, you know, it's we would like to invite you all to become members. It's $10 a year, and it will help us continue our programming for the community. So does that cover it, James? What was the other spiel?
Yeah, so go to friendsecopark.org, and there is a link there to become a member, a sustaining member. For $10, you get exclusive access to events like this, and exclusive priority access to the monthly, once it resumes, book sale, where you'll find amazing titles there, and have a chance to work with amazing folks supporting historic Filipino town and the library. So there.
Okay.
All right. Everybody, I'd like to add, this is David Rockello, president, and I'm assuming that I've been also rose up to the level of executive director now, because some of our letters while we were getting funding. But there's other library programs that the Echo Park Library are putting on, and we want you to go to those too if you can, or look them up at least. And Jocelyn did a great job of explaining, you know, what we all do as a library group, as a friends group. But the most important thing is that people take out books from the Echo Park Library. You can do it digitally or online. And like I said to my group, that we were the breakout group, you can pick the books up with no contact, and read Carlos Bulusan's book or any of the other wonderful books in the Philippine Heritage Book Collection. So I want to thank everybody for showing up today. I want to say, Jaime, you did a stellar job of putting this all together. And Carol and Florante, amazing. You know, I've learned so much from both of you. And all the participants, you all had something different to add. And this is all part of the tapestry, the fruit salad that's supposed to be America. Not so much a melting pot, but more of we're all different, but we can all be working, you know, to make this country a better place. So thank you all. And with that, I'm hoping to enjoy the fellowship of the merienda.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, everybody. Another link that's also easy to remember is www.cbbc, that stands for Carlos Bulusan Book Club, cbbc.club. So if you get to the Carlos Bulusan website, you'll find links to the Friends website and everything else. So that should be easy enough for you. And we have it all in our mailers. So, but definitely check our website out. And I think that's it. We have officially ended this webinar. Have a nice weekend. Hopefully we'll see you on the 22nd of August. So.